I just want to show some footage of an Unreal Engine 5 project that I worked on about a year ago, and wanted to talk a little bit about my experience working in Unreal Engine as a hobbyist. A lot of us that like to play around with this kind of stuff, we don't necessarily work in the gaming industry, or we're not professional game developers or professional artists. I have a lot of respect for those folks, but unfortunately, that hasn't been the direction that my career has gone. I work at the Portland Japanese Garden, and I decided to make a virtual reality version of some areas of the garden, and I'm doing it in Unreal Engine 5. And what I wanted to talk about was the kind of hardware that I had and the speed that it affords you. And I also wanted to talk about why I'm upgrading, because when you look at GPU comparisons, it's often very much based on gaming, and a lot of people use it to power things like Unreal Engine, SolidWorks, Fusion 360, video editing software, Blender, Maya, and and gosh, all kinds of stuff. I tend to work in things like Unreal Engine, Blender, SketchUp, uh, Fusion 360, and I use a photogrammetry program called Reality Capture, which also takes a lot of resources. So I'm going to just go over in this particular project what I'm trying to do and the system that I was using at the time. Currently, I am operating with a Gigabyte. I'm reading off the screen here. Gigabyte Z790 UDAC motherboard, which has a CPU from Intel. I believe it's an i7 13th gen i7. Um, it supports DDR5 RAM, so I have currently 64 gigs of DDR RAM, DDR5 RAM, and uh, in my motherboard right now, my GPU is a NVIDIA GeForce 2060 Super. I recently bought an RTX 4070 with 12 gigs of VRAM, which I will be putting into the motherboard. And I'm planning on doing some GPU comparisons for different budget NVIDIA and AMD cards. I have several between myself and my kids and a friend or two. I have several that I can compare, and I'm going to try to focus on doing things like uh, how they respond in Unreal Engine, how they respond in Blender. Um, Maybe I'll try to get a hold of some video editing samples or trials so I can demonstrate that. But I don't go real hardcore into video editing. I just do it enough to edit these kind of YouTube videos so you can see things relatively well edited. So I will show you um, what this looks like, the project in the Unreal Engine editor. So the first thing I did to work on this project was I got some pictures of the antique gate of the Portland Japanese Garden so I could work from that. And I wanted this one to be kind of loosey goosey, just kind of play on coming up with as much as I could out of my head on what I remember of the terrain. And For the actual gate, I used photogrammetry, which is a type of 3D modeling. I used reality capture to make the 3D model, which is made from taking multiple photos of an object, and the software stitches it all together into a 3D model with textures and everything. Then I drop that into Unreal Engine after I kind of populated it with different assets, which are like leaves and grass and trees and ferns and all kinds of things. So this is a very rough estimation of what the actual Portland Japanese garden entrance looks like. So what we're looking at is just some terrain that I built in Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine has a really awesome ability to just create like a sandbox, and you can elevate the land, and you can um, add foliage and rocks and dirt really easily. I was able to make this in under an hour. I mean, it looks pretty rough, and this is kind of a sketch more than anything. I am not a super talented modeler, but this is to make it look like what the actual entrance is. You go through the gate down here, and you go through the gate down here. It's called the Antique Gate. That little lantern that's right there doesn't actually reside there in real life. That's from another area of the garden. But I just wanted to kind of throw some elements of the garden into this. I put a person there so I could have an idea of the scale as I was moving things around and resizing things. So that whole gate and the steps are all created in reality capture by just walking around it and taking hundreds of photos, and then it stitches it all together, and you could see it's pretty rough looking. It's not great, but if I would have spent more time, I could have gotten a better model. Up, walking up this hillside here, I it's not really how it looks perfectly, but you can see some of the layering of the leaves where it can't quite reside on the hill correctly, so it's making like a stepped look. So these are all things that you have to tweak. I just wanted to give you a brief glimpse of what you can do as a hobbyist with relatively basic mid to low end modern computers. I will be showing more projects that I'm going to be working on in the near future, and I'll be comparing GPUs that I think can be considered budget nowadays. You know, the better CPU you have, whether it be AMD or Intel, the more modern CPU you have will help you in your processing for all the 3D movement and the viewport that you have along with your GPU, which I think you can still get by on the 2060 Super, which is very reasonably priced nowadays, but I'm opting for the RTX 4070. And in the comparisons that I'm planning on doing, I'll be showing you some charts on benchmarking for Blender and some Unreal benchmarks. If you like what you've seen, please hit the like button. It really helps me out, as this is a brand new channel, and I want to try to increase my subscribers and So hit subscribe and it'll let you know when I put out another video. I'm going to be focusing on hobbyists who are doing game development and editing and modeling, things like that. So if that's kind of the line of work that you're doing, and you don't need the 4090 and AMD Threadrippers, and you're trying to keep to a budget, then I think my videos are going to really help you out.